we can show you a picture of Kevin Johnson, who is now 37 years old. He was 19 at the time of the murder back in 2005. Sergeant McEntee was patrolling in Kirkwood's Meacham Park neighborhood when Johnson shot and killed him.
Despite his youth, Kevin Johnson Jr. is a notorious cop killer who committed the horrific crime of killing police officer McEntee at just about 19 years old. What makes this crime even more horrible is just how long it took for him to be convicted. Almost 17 years. In this video, we explore the horrifying story and the justice that was served for the innocent life he took. Back in 2005, Kevin Johnson Jr. was a 19-year-old kid from Kirkwood. His criminal journey started when the police of Kirkwood had been looking for his 12-year-old half-brother, Bam Bam, who was living with him. That day, his brother suffered a seizure at their home and later died of a heart condition in a hospital later in the day. And it was that evening that McEntee, the police officer who had responded to Johnson's brother's medical emergency, returned to the neighborhood in order to check into a report of fireworks in the neighborhood. While sitting in his patrol car in Meacham Park, talking to a teenager, Johnson approached the passenger side of the vehicle, fired several shots, and walked away from the vehicle. After McEntee was gunned down, his patrol car started to roll down the street and crashed into a tree. Neighbors called 911 and helped McEntee out of the vehicle. After that, Johnson walked up to McEntee and shot him 2 more times, in the back and in the back of his head. It is estimated that he was shot 7 times in total. Officer McEntee was the husband and father of 3 children who were ages 13, 10, and 7 at the time of the murder. For nearly 20 years, he worked as a police officer in various capacities. During the trial that followed up upon his arrest, his attorney had argued that the murder of McEntee may have been motivated by a sense of injustice and anger on the part of Johnson, who was 19 years old when he committed the murder, as he believed that the officer had not done enough to save the life of his 12-year-old half-brother, Joseph Bam Bam Long. The first trial ended in a hung jury. During his second trial in 2007, Johnson was convicted of first-degree murder after being found guilty. Johnson testified that he was in a trance-like state when he shot McEntee. In his appeals and push for clemency, Johnson's lawyers and advocates have noted his age at the time of the crime. Also, the police stated that Johnson was physically and mentally abused during his childhood. Surprisingly, a special prosecutor filed a motion in late November 2022 in the Circuit Court of St. Louis County to vacate Johnson's execution. This was after finding evidence that racial discrimination played a role in Johnson's conviction and death sentence. Johnson was black and McEntee was white. The Circuit Court denied the motion. The court also noted that there was no evidence in the motion made by the special prosecutor to vacate Johnson's execution that directly indicated racial hostility or motivation in the case. According to the report, former St. Louis County Prosecutor Bob McCulloch, who prosecuted the case, did not act based on racial motives in seeking the death penalty for the defendant. Despite attending Johnson's execution, McCulloch insists that race did not play any part in the execution. And as far as being angry toward his brother's death, several of Johnson's former teachers from the Kirkwood School District who advocated for his clemency told of how he had endured abuse as a child, and they said he was no longer the angry 19-year-old who shocked McEntee. According to reports, Johnson declined to eat a final meal after his trial ended. It was also reported by the Missouri Department of Corrections that he declined to make a final statement. For the first time ever during a modern execution in Missouri, Johnson has not hung alone during his execution. When the drug was administered to him, his spiritual advisor was allowed to be by his side throughout the procedure. It eventually came to the point that after years of determined legal efforts to save Kevin Johnson from execution, the 37-year-old Kirkwood man was put to death by lethal injection on November 29, 2022, at a state prison in Bonne Terre, Missouri. A statement read by the director of the Corrections Department after the execution was read by Mike Parson, a Republican, and a former county sheriff said, "We hope that this will bring some closure to Sergeant McEntee's loved ones who continue to anguish without him."